I've been really thinking about the idea of people pleasing lately as I coach leaders and just this whole concept that we don't want to hurt people's feelings, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to is we feel bad doing that, but people pleasing is not the same as people serving. And I think at the heart of a servant leader, someone who wants the good of the other person, like who really sees, I have the ability to help this person out of something they're stuck in and they might not even see it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. It will literally save you time and money. Friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. But before I tell you about my new friend, Kara, let me remind you, if you haven't signed up for our email list, we are putting out resources every single month that wrestle with the question of the month. February's resource is out now, and it's a great start to continue to help us take this idea from information to transformation. Today on the podcast, you are absolutely going to love Kara List. Kara is a dear friend of mine, and we have a meaningful conversation about kind of the core skills that help shape leadership and thriving workplace culture. She's an expert on culture, and as we know, culture is key. She talks a lot about communication. She talks about how thoughtful leadership requires us to consider not just what we say, but the impact that our words have on our people. This one is chock full of nuggets. I know you're absolutely going to love it. If you do, be sure to follow Kara on Instagram. Let her know that you heard her here on the podcast. So now, here's a quick word from our partners, and then my conversation with Kara List. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have one of my internet friends with us, Kara. Kara, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast today.
Tony, thanks so much. This is going to be great. Can't wait.
So as you know, we are wrestling with the 12 most Googled leadership questions throughout the year, and it's February. And so the question that we're wrestling with this month is, what are the most important skills that we have to have as a leader? What's your answer? What say you?
Well, I would say that the most important skill for leadership to be a leader of impact is communication. And that feels obvious. It feels really broad, but we are communicating all the time. We are communicating internally all the time. And I think one of the biggest things I find as I coach leaders, as I've wrestled through this as a leader, is that we are people who make assumptions. We tell ourselves stories. And so often when things aren't communicated at all or aren't communicated well, we create a story in our minds, we make an assumption, and we roll with it. And that's the filter by which we hear and see everything else. It's the filter in which we choose to act next upon. And so as leaders, if we can be so intentional about how we communicate, what we communicate, clear about it, faithful to do it well and truthfully, then it makes such a big difference in our workplaces, in our families, in our churches, in our lives, in our communities. And it sounds like a big task. Like, well, how do I grow in communication? What do I need to do? And it's really just, it's thoughtful things that we can do each day. And ultimately, it has a huge impact.
I love that word, thoughtful. I think so many leaders want to use that word, but let's define it. How would you define what a thoughtful leader is? I was just in a meeting this morning, a conscious leadership cohort, and one of the guys stood up and he's like, Tony, I just want to be more thoughtful. What does that look like in your world?
Yeah. So I would say being a thoughtful leader is really just considering the impact of your words. It's considering, if I say this, then what will it mean for that person, or what will it do? Or if I don't say this, what will it mean and what will it do? So it's really taking the time, the quick moment even, to consider impact. That's how I see it as being thoughtful, less about thinking about what I'm going to say and more about, what's the intention here? What do I want the outcome to be? And what do I need to say in order to make that outcome happen? Being thoughtful about the impact. That's what I would say it means to be a thoughtful leader. And when I think of being thoughtful, obviously there's the aspect of like thinking, of contemplating what you're going to say, but it's also this aspect of kindness. You think about people who are thoughtful, like Tony, when you think of someone in your world who's thoughtful, what are characteristics of that person?
they go out of their way to be mindful of how other people are feeling and are showing up. So, like the person who sends, there's a buddy of mine whose name also happens to be Tony. Every time we meet, he sends a handwritten thank you card. And I'm like, he's so thoughtful. Like, and I'm so, and then I instantly go, I'm so terrible at that, right? Like, it's,
Yeah, so it had an impact, right? So you obviously can't see inside people's head. So you don't know whether they're thinking about things, right? Like, are they thoughtful? Are they being thoughtful about this? I don't know. Like, I don't know what they're thinking, but I receive a benefit of their thoughtfulness, and that's how I know that they're thoughtful. So I would say that, yeah, it's really just about
how do we measure that impact, right? What's the feedback loop that we need to start thinking about or creating? So let's say, oh, Kara, I'm all in on being thoughtful. I love what you're saying. What's the feedback loop on no, like Tony does, unless he does listen to the podcast, but like now he knows how much I appreciate the notes, but he doesn't, before this, he didn't know. How do we create feedback loops on saying, well, so that we can experiment with what's working and what's not working?
Yeah, I love that you said that, because to me, one of the primary signs of a leader who communicates well is normalizing feedback. So I'm going to answer your question. But to go a little bit further into it is I always say, I can't say CFO because that role is taken, but to be a chief feedback giver, a CFG, we'll give it a new little thing. Like, how can we normalize feedback in a way that loop exists because it's just the way we do things. Like, we accept feedback in the cultures of our workplaces, in our homes, as not something that is special or something that happens when a big moment needs to happen, or even when we have to give hard feedback. But feedback is just the way we operate. When someone does something great, we give feedback. We celebrate it. We say, this is what good looks like. We hold it up. When something needs correction, we handle it immediately. We don't wait for that next one-on-one. If I'm talking about a workplace setting here, we don't wait a whole week. We just say, hey, real quick, I noticed this morning that in the meeting, your slides were out of order. And that happens, right? But the impact was, it just threw us off. It was a little confusing. So what do you think? What do you think we can do, or how can I help you in the future to be set up for success in our team meetings, right? Like, this is not a sit down. This isn't like a, hey, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we need to have a conversation. It's just a normalization of feedback. And shortening the loop. We're just telling the truth. We're providing clarity, and this is hard for people, right? I'm not saying this is easy. People like to use the phrase like recovering people pleaser. I say, if you say you're a recovering people pleaser, you're probably still a people pleaser, and that's okay, because I am too. Like, I'm not criticizing that, but really thinking about the idea of people pleasing lately as I coach leaders, and just this whole concept that we don't want to hurt people's feelings, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to, is we feel bad doing that, but people pleasing is not the same as people serving. And I think at the heart of a servant leader, someone who wants the good of the other person, like who really sees, I have the ability to help this person out of something they're stuck in, and they might not even see it. It is not kind to soften it or to not say anything at all. The kind thing is to serve them with truth. And even though that can be hard, that is the kindness I think we all want for ourselves. And so if we can do that consistently and casually, like you said, shorten the loop, address it right away, tell the truth. And when we start to feel ourselves making excuses for it, or using nicer words. When I say nicer, I just mean, words that kind of don't make it as clear as what we're trying to say. We can just stop ourselves and be like, why am I not being honest? And most often it's because it's self-preservation. It's, we're fearful of what that person will think of us. We don't want to feel bad. We don't want to ruin our own day by ruining their day. But if we can do this consistently and casually, people just come to know it as the way we do things, as the way that we are. And it works in reverse. So it's not only me to you as your leader, but like, I want it too. So I'm going to ask for it as much as I offer it. I'm going to not wait for you to give me feedback, because chances are, if I'm your employer, you're not going to just feel comfortable freely giving me feedback. I'm going to ask for it. I'm going to be okay when you don't give it for a while, because that's uncomfortable. So persisting and asking for feedback creates this culture of, this is what's normal here, so that I can get the feedback from you. I don't feel like you're being thoughtful, right? And I don't know if a person would feel comfortable saying that. I hope that they would. For me, I hope that they would.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have to create a culture of normalizing feedback, both constructive feedback, positive feedback, helpful feedback, all the kinds of feedback, in order for us to really know, is what I am doing coming off as thoughtful? Like, is my leadership having an impact? Because I can only see my side of the sphere, right? Like, I can only see, I love this example of a sphere in front of us, because you can't see all sides of a sphere at the same time. It's impossible. You can only see your side. So the only way to see how you're coming off to someone or how things are going on their side is just simply to ask. That's the only way we can know. Otherwise, we'll make an assumption.
When I first reached out to you on Instagram, one of the things that struck me was how much you care about culture. And I'm a big culture guy myself. I think it's one of those things that every leader needs to be intentional about. But I'm curious, where in your story did you realize that culture was such an important part? Kind of give us the genesis. How did you end up here coaching and being a culture expert? How did those kind of align out of your experience and leadership?
Yeah, so I actually graduated. I went to Grove City College. Do you know Grove City College? It's right near the Ohio border. So it's north of Pittsburgh, but it's a private liberal arts Christian college in Western Pennsylvania. And I graduated with a music education degree. I went on to
music. Doing now, right?
Totally. Isn't that how the Lord works, though? Like, you look back and you're like, look at how did I get here? So I started teaching in a public school in Northern Virginia, teaching elementary music. I had 600 students that I saw in the course of 1 week. It was seriously the sweetest job. I loved the work. I believed I was good at it. I saw impact, but the leadership culture of that school destroyed my love for what I was doing. And I remember and I didn't have the words. Like, I didn't know anything about leadership or organizational structure or anything at the time, but I just remember having this feeling like, why does this not feel like a team? Like, why don't we have common purpose? Why does it feel like every teacher is out for themselves and no one feels really safe here? And I remember having a leader who it just always seemed like she had to correct something, even if like my collar was off. Like, she would make sure to correct like what I looked like. So there was always something she could add that I wasn't quite meeting up to. And I thought I was doing a good job. I had great relationships with the students and the other teachers, but from the leadership, it just felt like they couldn't. It was just so hard for them to acknowledge and support the wins for their teachers. And they were under pressure. The system is hard. Like, I get it. But ultimately, 5 years in, it got to a point where I was like, I can't work here anymore. And it's so sad. I remember the last day of school, my last year there, watching the buses drive away and weeping, like literally going into my classroom and so upset, because I was like, this is not how it's supposed to. Like, I love this job, but I can't work here anymore. And ultimately, it was culture. Again, I didn't have the words for it. So I ended up moving into a arts nonprofit, educational nonprofit in the area. I started working for them, and they hired me as a managing director right away. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what anything meant. And within 6 months, I had gotten promoted to artistic director, which was the number one position in that company, because I was young and I had, industry experience and I had vision and I had energy and all the things that they thought that they wanted. But what I didn't have was any management experience, like zero management experience. I was leading people that were my parents' age. I had a board of directors, right? A nonprofit. I don't know how does this function? I work for you, but I'm the boss here. There was so much that I look back now, and this is like 13 years ago, just for some time frame reference.
Sure.
And I think I just didn't know anything. And it didn't mean I wasn't set up to be, it doesn't mean I didn't have potential to be a good leader, or I didn't do good things there. It's just I had no training. I had no one really telling me these things that I didn't know. And I had to learn the hard way. And I did. I learned the hard way. But one thing led to the next. And that company was a part of a parent company. And I ended up moving into a role at that parent company. And in the Lord's interesting sovereign plan for my life, once I started working for that larger parent company, which is the largest after-school nonprofit theater company in the country, it's a very large organization. COVID happened. There was a very public-facing crisis that happened at this organization. It needed a whole restructure. The board of directors kind of removed a lot of people in head leadership and looked at me and said, you're up, Kara. And here again, I found myself looking around and being like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And so the Lord used that time to really grow me, and we had to come to a lot of interesting decisions in that process with a lot of stakeholders, and a lot of it came down to like around our culture, and what does this look like, and what do we want people to feel? And when I say culture, I think that word is so buzzy. Like, what does it even mean? Like, especially in Christian circles, we use the word culture to mean like the world. Right. Like we can culture in so many things. But for this sake, it's just a lived reality of your workplace. Like when I talk about culture in the workplace, it is just what's actually happening. It is what we do, how we do it, and how we feel about it. And those things together are the culture. And as the leader, you really have the potential to make or break a culture for your team. And I like to think of it like gardening. I'm not a gardener. I'm starting to be. I'm learning to be a gardener. But ultimately, as the gardener, you do the best you can, right? You have a seed, you have the soil, you have the environment, you have like these variables, but it grows on its own, right? Like it has to do its thing. There's only so much you can do, but you can do your best to control the variables. And so I call that culture keeping, right? Because culture is going to exist, right? Like it's not going to be totally your fault if the culture isn't good. It is your responsibility if the culture isn't good. But everyone's involved, right? Like everyone has a part in culture. So you can't control the culture, but you can work on the variables really hard in order to cultivate this environment where culture is primed to grow. And so to answer your question, like 10 minutes later, my journey is that I experienced a lot of culture that I did not like, culture that made me leave jobs that I loved and that I was good at. And that's actually right now, statistics show that that's the leading reason people are leaving workplaces they would stay for a good workplace culture and bad pay over like leaving for bad pay and a good work culture. It's the number one reason people are leaving is, this idea of toxic workplace culture. And so I experienced that personally. And so from that point on, I just wanted to be a leader. I didn't know how. I learned the long way and the hard way, making so many mistakes. And that's honestly why I'm a coach now, is because once I got out of running that nonprofit, I looked back and I thought, 13 years ago, I really would have loved to have someone be kind enough to look back and say, I learned these things and I have these frameworks, and you actually have the potential, and I'd love to work with you in order to help you get there. And that just never happened for me. And Rory Vaden says you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. And so that's really my heart, is to be like, how can I serve that girl? The one who got thrown into leadership because that was God's plan, with really no reason, like no right to be there, but a heart to serve and a humility to learn, and really a desire to see people love what they do so that an organization that matters can have an impact. And that's really what culture is building a workplace ecosystem that lends itself to impact.
One of the things that you said in there that I wanted to kind of drill down on is this idea about lived in experience. And here's one of the things that I often wrestle with, is that when you're the boss, your lived in experience is very different than your direct reports, but it's extremely different than your direct reports. So if you start thinking 2 level down, when you're leading this outward facing nonprofit, this monumental change, obviously you've gone through some serious pain and turmoil, you're thrust into this position. How are you tending the garden that's 2 levels away?
Yeah. So I like to think about it as, I said culture keeper, right? Like that, right. That's kind of the idea of you as that, highest level up. But under that, you're producing culture carriers, right? And those are the people that are going to then take it to the next level. And so that's why I go back to communication is so important, because what you're saying, what you are really establishing as this is why we do what we do here. This is why it matters. That is the messaging, and not just the messaging, but you living that out then models for people how they live it out. And to kind of put it in a really simple way, it's kind of like parenting, in the sense that, we have a family culture, you have a family culture, every family has it, whether you're intentionally working on it or not. And ultimately, you, as the culture keeper of the house, um, are creating a culture that then those children will carry out with them. And it's just like a ripple effect, just like throwing a rock in a pond, right? I might be the one throwing the rock, but it has ripple effects. And it might be today, like my kids are on Thursdays, they go to a 1-day charter program. They're homeschooled, but they go to a 1-day charter program. And we were having conversations in the car about one particular situation with another kid, and however my son chooses to handle that today is going to be a ripple effect of the culture that we are building in our home. And then, Lord willing, they'll grow up someday and have a family, and their culture will be for better or for worse because of ours, right? Whether it's to mimic good things or to correct bad things, our culture has an impact on them and they carry it out. So I really think when it comes down to the lived experience of the direct reports of our direct reports, we have to be faithful, to be true to what we have established as being important to our organizations. We have to live that out in a way that cares well for people. We have to develop the people that are our direct reports so that they can carry the culture to their direct reports. And then we have to hold them accountable when it doesn't work out the way we hope.
One of the things that I love when we go through a story like this, where we look back and kind of bring it all together to the moment, is we can see God's hand in all of it, the way he's kind of shaped it and the way it's worked. I'm always curious, though, when I talk to leaders, one of the things that I hear all the time is, how do I know what's right? What's the right yes? What's the right no? So I can imagine the stress of the upheaval of that nonprofit and then that board of directors going, okay, Carrie, you're up. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that discernment process, not only in that moment, but in all the moments since. How do you discern what the right yes is for you based off of what God is calling you to?
Yeah, that's so hard. And the answer is I did not know at all what the right yeses were. I did not know at all. And, there were some yeses that led to better yeses. I think that sometimes we're afraid of the finality of a decision, but we make mistakes, and we really are doing the best we can with what we know at the time. And again, like next to leadership, my experience that's in my face the most is parenting, and we're doing the best we can with what we know at the time by God's grace. And does that mean that we do it perfectly? Absolutely not. But it is that in that situation, it's just like the most perfect example to be like, you know what? I failed here. But God is faithful and God is perfect and good. And, especially with my kids, just any opportunity to show them that like we are journeying together in this towards heaven. Like I am not superior to you. I am a sinner, saved by Jesus, just taking one foot in front of the other, being built up by the sanctification of the Holy Spirit. So we're working together, to do this. And we'll make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. But in that, I think there is a piece of just knowing yourself and knowing where you lack discernment, where you lack wisdom and experience. And for me, I'm also a working genius certified coach. And so I love the working genius model. And one of my frustrations is discernment. And the reason that is because I have ideas and I love to get people rallied around ideas. And I think that's why initially I was put in leadership, was because I got people excited about ideas.
That's the galvanizer, right?
That's the galvanizer. So it's invention and galvanizing. But in the middle of those two is discernment. It's the piece where you stop and say, is this a good idea?
I'm just a galvanizer guy.
Okay, so that's really great that those are side by side. Like that's a real benefit. See, because I skip discernment and that's a frustration. And that has not served me in my life. But now I know. And it's funny, my husband has a discernment genius, and I don't like to slow down. When I would show up at staff meetings and I'd be like ready to go. I'm like, I have this idea. I'm going to get everyone excited. This is going to be a standing ovation moment. Like they're just going to lose their minds being like, Kara, you are awesome. And they would just and they're like all the bullet holes. I mean, like they're like killing my ideas. And I remember thinking, these people are no people. They're fixed mindset people. When really they were just exercising a skill that I didn't have, which was slowing down and saying, how do we make sure that we're not surprised by failure? Right? Like, how do we do that? How do we discern this? And so now, and in those times, just really recognizing I have people around me who have gifts and skills that I do not have. And that's okay. I can get really bummed about that I can't be the perfect all-encompassing leader that can do all the things. Or I can say, God has gifted me uniquely to do these things, and I'm going to do those things really well. And I'm going to resource the people he has provided me with to do all these other things really well. And together we can come up with a much better yes than my own yes would have been. And so I think that was really the key then, was I really had it when I was put into that very large position in a very difficult time. I could feel nothing but my inability to do it well, my inadequacy in that moment. But it was we had such a peace that this is what God was calling me to. And so it's just that willingness to be like, okay, Lord, I'm going to step out in faith, and I'm going to trust that you're going to use this and the people around me, hopefully for the good of this organization. And that's really the ultimate goal. And yeah, so I say that's how I came to the best yeses, was realizing that I just didn't know, and doing my best to resource the people God had put in my life to help.
Yeah, faithful obedience is what I hear in all that, right? Like, it's just that willingness to show up and take the right next step. And I don't really know, but I'm walking by faith, and that's beautiful. I can tell. I love to listen to people talk about their relationship with the Lord, and yours kind of just drips in there very beautifully. One of the things that we say around here a lot is that if you're not dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
Wow.
And so I always love to listen to high-level leaders and steal some of their disciplines. So you're a coach, you're a podcaster, you're a mom, you're doing all the speaker extraordinaire, writer, all the things. What are some of the disciplines that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis that we can steal from you that would make us better humans?
I'm still very much working on that, Tony. I'm just surviving over here. No, but
how old are your kids?
I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a just 5-year-old.
Oh,
I just turned 5.
Okay, so because so many of my listeners, the bold ones, they the community of people, they're in it too, right? They feel overwhelmed constantly. So what's working for you in this season, knowing that it could change tomorrow?
Yeah. So I will say that even though I'm in it, I definitely feel that relief of like, no one's napping, no one's in diapers. Everyone can like use the bathroom independently. Like there's like those markers, we're like, okay, I think we can all play a board game together. Like there's like those markers. So I definitely feel a little bit of a sense of relief that like we're in the next season and it's a little easier. But I would say right now, for me, because I homeschool my kids, my husband is a pastor, so we are dedicated to the work of the church. There's a lot going on. Ultimately, I have to decide what my non-negotiables are each day. And then I have to be okay at the end of the day, knowing that if I accomplish those non-negotiables, that if I got anything else done, that's just bonus. That's just extra. Because I think we see the long list of what it means to be this, that, or the next thing, an engaged parent, an engaged person in your neighborhood, building relationships, a pastor's wife. Like we have all these like labels we put on ourselves that mean something to us. Something we've only communicated in our own minds, these assumptions we make about what it means to be these things. And if you add those up, it's just too much. So at the end of the day, like what are the non-negotiables? And as long as you can be really realistic about what those are, the things that, this has to come first. And then if I get the rest done, I get the rest done, then you can sleep at night knowing that you've accomplished that. So for me, practically, most days, it looks like a very minimal amount of personal work. So that could mean like on Thursdays, I batch a lot of my work because my kids are at this 1-day program. So I can do it. My coaching cohort runs on Thursdays. I schedule a lot of calls on Thursdays, but throughout the week, it's really like I send a weekly email. I do usually a daily social media post, which I batch and schedule. I answer a couple emails. So that might mean, my non-negotiable for my work is an hour on days that are not Thursday, an hour. Right? That I sit down while my kids are resting in the afternoon. For homeschool, it can be like, no matter what, we have to do Bible, we have to do language arts, and we have to do math. If we get to social studies, if we get to science, like that's amazing. My hope would be that I would do all of those things, that we would have this like beautifully curated homeschool experience. But the reality is like someone's in a mood, right? Or the dog threw up, or like whatever happens, it's just life. And I think the same goes for the other aspects of life. So like, what are your non-negotiables in your ministry? What are your non-negotiables for your marriage? Like, what does it look like? What at the end of the day do we have to say, like, did we connect today? How do we make sure we connected today? Like, what does that mean? Maybe it's like, scheduling that one date night a month or whatever it looks like, to say, what are the things that I will not let anything else get in the way of? And those things have to be really realistic and pretty simple. And then everything else is just bonus. And you can have the peace of knowing I'm being faithful to the things I've committed to. And that also helps you to know, like, hey, if I say yes to that extra thing, is it going to infringe on my non-negotiables for these top 3, 4 priorities in my life? And if it is going to infringe, then it just has to be a no for now. So, yeah.
I think I like the framework of a non-negotiable, and like, for me, one of those is like, hey, I'm going to start the day out in the Word, and I'm going to do that before I do anything else. And so I can't go to the gym where I really want to go until after I've read. And like, so I kind of create systems that protect me from me, because I'm tricky. I'm sneaky. Like it's one of those things, like, how do we create those non-negotiables on a daily basis?
Yeah. And being destroyed by distractions, like you said, that is like, those are often good distractions. Like, they're not always like doom scrolling on social media, which is a distraction, but it can be such good things too. But they
wakes up and says, man, today's the day that I want to ruin my marriage.
Right.
We just stop dating, or we stop doing those little things, those non-negotiables. Once we start negotiating with them, it just gets so out of control so fast.
Yeah. And we lie to ourselves by thinking that things will wait for us. Like, our marriage will wait for us if we don't work for it. Like, or our workplace culture will wait for us if we don't work on it, when really it's always moving in one direction or the other constantly. It doesn't just sit around and say, we'll wait for you to be ready to work on this. And that's why your non-negotiables matter so much.
And one of the things that you do as a podcaster, 75 episodes in as we record this.
Yeah.
What have you learned podcasting for 75 episodes?
Yeah, so much. I've learned what I care most about saying, right? Like, it's just in the reps. It's coming down to, like, just as podcaster to podcaster, it's like at the beginning, you're like, I could talk about anything. What do I want to talk about? And then you get real clear pretty quick in the reps of, like, this is what I really want to share, because I could talk about everything, or I could just really hone my skills in talking about this one specific thing, which for me is better conversations. My podcast is called the Better Conversations Podcast. My heart is just to equip people to build thriving workplace cultures, to build relationships in the way we have conversations, anything from how we deal with conflict to how we lead one-on-ones and staff meetings, how we normalize feedback, how we celebrate wins. It's all in what we say or what we don't say, how we listen. And so I've learned just a lot about that, like as I'm talking, I'm learning, like as I'm thinking through things, I'm a verbal processor. So podcasting is great. I've also learned a lot personally just about being true to my experience and my thoughts, regardless of whether I feel like, you use the word expert, whether I feel like an expert from one day to the next. I believe that, like, the Lord has given me a passion and a heart and a knowledge and skill set to do this. Am I like the authority on it? No. Ultimately, like Jesus, when it comes to leadership, like everything we can know in the person of Jesus Christ. And every one of us who are talking about leadership are just like saying again the things that have already been said. Like, we're not making up anything new. Like this everything I've said today is nothing that I have originally thought of. This is all things we can look at the person and work of Jesus Christ and know. And we just get the benefit of having the platform to say it again. Right. And so because of that, I think I've learned to take the pressure off of, like, is this the exact right thing? Are people going to think this is the right thing? Or just that people pleasing, that nature of, like, is this even good? Like, what am I saying even good? And just to say, like, am I being faithful to help people with what the Lord has put on my heart? And ultimately, he's going to use it for what he wants. And when people comment on my podcast, is on video on YouTube too, and people comment something, my most standard response is, glad it was helpful. At the end of the day, if I'm being helpful to one person, then we're going to keep podcasting and learn a lot of things along the way.
Amen. So good.
What have you learned?
That there's so many interesting people in the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best. For me, I'm a relational guy. So, like, that's the best part. Like, this is, having internet friends and being able to, I feel like a PhD in leadership I've gotten over the last several years, right? Like, it's the goal of doing this. Also, building community requires you showing up consistently to build trust.
Yeah.
Like it just takes a really long time to become an overnight success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is, I was actually saying this to my husband last night. When you start something like this, like when you decide, like, because not all coaches have like an online presence. Right. So when you're coaching, you decide like, okay, I'm going to like bring this to the world via the internet. You want it to work and you want it to work quickly. But I'm so glad, like for me, I launched in May 2024. So this May, it will be 2 years for me. And I look back on, those first season and I'm like, man, it took the reps of just getting clarity and confidence. And it's the same in leadership. It's the same in your workplace, right? Like people ask me, how do I grow in confidence as a leader? Or what do I do to appear, like to have leadership presence? And I just always say, like, don't worry about that. Like, don't worry about leadership presence, because ultimately, are you clear on what you're saying? And are you doing it a lot? Like, are you practicing a lot? Because leadership really isn't about perfection at all, although we'd like it to be. It's just about practice. It's just about like doing it. And I think it's
movement. Are you moving?
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Action leads to clarity. And we sometimes want to wait to be really clear before we take the action, but we will wait forever. And so I'm thankful for the time and the people I've gotten to meet also, and the pace of it, because that's obviously, regardless of how fast or not, or how big or small my podcast is, the Lord knows who needs to hear it. And so I just want to be faithful.
Amen. I love it. Okay, there's so many places to find you on the internet. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
But before I do that, where can the bold ones learn more about you? I know you have a couple of coaching cohorts coming up that might be a good fit for some of our community. How can we get connected to the Cara world?
Yeah. So just casually, you can find my podcast online. It's the Better Conversations podcast on your typical podcast platforms, or on YouTube. I am on LinkedIn and Instagram. I tend to hang out on Instagram a little more than LinkedIn, but that's where you could find me in DMs and have a chat. Also, if you would like some resources or to learn more about how to work with me, you can go to Hey Carolist, like Hey Carolist, like kind of what's up, heycarolist.com/grow. And I just have compiled some of my favorite resources and podcast episodes that are really topic based, like conflict, how to manage conflict between two people, how to give feedback, how to run a staff meeting, just like kind of your basic topics. And also, so my coaching cohort, it's called the Better Conversations Accelerator. And its goal is really just to take leaders who are like, I am frustrated by people problems at work, and I want to be able to learn how to take those people problems and get rid of the people pleasing and just turn them into productivity and peace in my workplace so I can serve people well. And I want to be in a community of like-minded leaders who also do that. So I have a cohort actually starting next month that is specifically for ministry leaders in this. And the unique angle is oftentimes ministry leaders deal with employees, but volunteers. And it's hard to know, right? How to lead volunteers in a way where I need to give them feedback, but they're not employed here. So how do I do that? And also, like, we're church members together. Like, and there's an interesting aspect to that too. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me on social or at heycarolist.com/grow. And I would love to see if you're a right fit for the program.
And of course, we'll link to all those things in the show notes. And the last question that I'm asking people this year is about leadership, and specifically about leaders in your life. So as you think about the life that you've lived, not choosing anyone in scripture, because obviously there's the perfect leader there, but who is the greatest leader in your life?
Yeah. So her name is Ruth, and not the Bible Ruth, a person in my life, Ruth. And she was actually also, when I was brought into this role during this crisis moment for this organization, she was brought in as a new board chair. And so we were a team in this process. And the reason I would say she has just been the greatest example of leadership to me is because she considers her gifting to be being a bridge. Mm-hmm. And she's so gifted at active listening, at really hearing, at seeking what she does not know, at seeking what she does not understand with such genuine, authentic curiosity, immediately surrendering everything to the Lord. Like, the woman is just like, it's continually convicting to me how she would just be like, we need to pray more about this. And like, we should do it now. And she just has one of those ways where there's conflict, where there's heat, she can just temper the room. She can bring it down because it's It's just about the sphere, right? Like, how can we learn more about what your side of the sphere looks like? How can I help you understand what my side of the sphere looks like? And we can only do that by asking questions instead of asserting what we think your side says, or making those assumptions, or just pushing my side towards you. So she taught me a lot about being the person in the middle and what that looks like, and also just having a temperament that is low emotion. And I've learned a lot from her. She's like seen all the worst sides of me and my leadership. And her like kindness and care has just been like a spiritual mother relationship as well as a leadership relationship. So it's been discipleship and mentoring and teaching and all of the things. And I'm so thankful for her. Yeah.
It's so fascinating. I've been asking this question a lot. And one of the things that's a common reality that I didn't expect was that all of the great leaders were also soul care leaders. They weren't just bottom line leaders. They were spiritual mothers, spiritual fathers, people that tended to us in our lowest times. So fascinating.
Yeah. And you can do that even in the secular workplace. Like, that is not something that it has to be unique to a faith-based or ministry industry. And so I just want to encourage people who are listening that if you're like, I want to be that leader, but how do I do that in a space where I can't speak the gospel to people around me? And you can do that in ways that are so loving and gracious. And I would say, to boil it down, just like I said earlier, just tell the truth, right? Like, be someone who tells the truth, and that will be something that distinguishes you and something that will ultimately care for people.
Amen. Kara, this was so much fun. Thank you for agreeing to come on, and
Tony,
for the work that you're doing to build the kingdom. I can't wait to stay connected as we both continue on our journey.
Yes. Thanks, Tony. Happy to be here.
What a great podcast, guys. I absolutely love Kara's heart. I know that you do too. Don't forget that at the end of every episode, we're doing our closing coaching question. One question to help you wrestle with the content a little more in depth. Today's question: how intentionally are you shaping your culture through the way you communicate? And what feedback are you willing to invite that could make you a better leader? Let me say it again. How intentionally are you shaping your culture through the way you communicate? And what feedback are you willing to invite that could make you a better leader? As always, we're forever thankful for you. Be sure to sign up for our email list. Get those resources, because we want to move from information to application to transformation. As always, if you need anything from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to get a hold of at TWMilt on Instagram, or Tony at twmilt.com. Remember, friends, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.